The Brothers Grimm were Jacob and Wilhelm Grimm. They were German scholars. The brothers loved stories from a young age. Growing up in the German countryside, they were surrounded by rich folklore. They listened to people tell old folk tales, which sparked their interest in preserving these stories. In 1812, they published a book called Children's and Household Tales. This book contained many famous fairy tales. One of these tales was Snow White. The Grimm's version of Snow White is darker than later versions. It is full of violence and scary events. This version is more true to the oral tradition. It shows how stories change over time. The Grimm's fairy tales are still popular today. They have been translated into many languages. The stories teach important lessons. These lessons are about good versus evil and the power of hope. The story of Snow White begins in winter. A queen sits sewing by a window. Snow falls outside. The queen pricks her finger and wishes for a daughter. She wants a daughter with skin as white as snow, lips as red as blood, and hair as black as ebony. The queen's wish comes true. She names her daughter Snow White. Sadly, the queen dies after Snow White is born. A new queen comes to the castle. The new queen is beautiful but vain. She has a magic mirror. She asks the mirror, "Mirror, mirror on the wall, who in this land is fairest of all?" The mirror always tells the truth. The queen is happy when the mirror says she is the fairest. However, Snow White grows more beautiful each day. One day, the mirror says Snow White is the fairest. The queen is enraged. She is consumed by jealousy. The queen orders her huntsman to take Snow White into the forest. She tells him to kill Snow White. The huntsman feels sorry for the innocent girl. He cannot bring himself to kill her. The huntsman lets Snow White go. He brings the queen the heart of a wild animal. He tells her it is Snow White's heart. Snow White is lost and alone in the woods. She comes across a small cottage. She enters the cottage. Inside she finds 7 tiny beds and 7 little chairs. She is tired and hungry. She eats a little from each plate and drinks a sip from each cup. Then, she falls asleep on one of the beds. The owners of the cottage are 7 dwarfs. They return home from their work in the mines. They are surprised to find Snow White asleep in their home. Snow White wakes up. She is frightened by the dwarfs at first, but they are kind to her. They offer her a place to stay. The queen asks her mirror who is the fairest. The mirror tells her Snow White is still alive. The queen is furious. She disguises herself as an old peddler woman. She goes to the dwarf's cottage. The queen tricks Snow White into taking a bite of a poisoned apple. Snow White falls into a deep sleep. The dwarfs believe she is dead. They place her in a glass coffin. They mourn for her. One day a prince comes riding through the forest. He sees Snow White in the glass coffin. He is struck by her beauty. He asks the dwarfs if he can take her back to his castle. The dwarfs agree. As the prince's servants carry the coffin, they stumble. The bite of poisoned apple dislodges from Snow White's throat. She awakens. The prince is overjoyed. He asks Snow White to marry him. Snow White and the prince invite everyone to their wedding. The evil queen attends, not knowing Snow White is alive. When she sees Snow White, she is shocked. She is forced to dance in red-hot iron shoes as punishment for her wickedness. The story of Snow White teaches that true beauty comes from within. It also warns against the dangers of envy and jealousy. Even though it is a dark tale, it ends with hope. Goodness and innocence prevail over evil.